Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Sara DAMIA binti KHAIROADHA. My ID number is SMC 25020088. So today, I will explain about inflation. So first, what is inflation? According to BlackRock, inflation is the overall increase in the prices of goods and services over time. When inflation occurs, the purchasing power of money decreases. This means that the same amount of money can buy fewer goods and services than before. For your info, so there are two main types of inflation. The first type is the demand pull inflation. This inflation happens when demand for goods and services is higher than the available supply. Because more people want to buy products than businesses can provide, prices increases. For example, if there is a very high demand for smartphones but limited supply, smartphone prices will rise. So, the second type is cost push inflation. Cost push inflation occurs when the cost of production increases. Businesses face higher expenses such as fuel, raw materials or labor costs, and they raise prices to cover these additional costs. For example, when fuel prices increase, it costs more to transport goods, so that business then raise product prices to cover the higher transportation costs. So now, let us look at how rising fuel prices affected Malaysia's inflation rate in March 2026. Malaysia's inflation rate increased from 1.4% in February 2026 to 1.7% in March 2026. The main contributor to this increase was the transport category, whose inflation rate rose from 0.7% to 1.6%, while recording a 2.1% monthly increase. One of the main reasons for the increase was the rise in fuel prices. The price of RON 97 increased from 3.25 ringgit to 3.85 ringgit per litre, where an increase of 60 cents. The price of diesel rose from 3.12 ringgit to 3.92 ringgit per litre, an increase of 80 cents. Meanwhile, non-subsidy RON 95 increased from 2.67 ringgit to 3.27 per litre, also an increase of 60 cents. These higher fuel prices increased transportation and logistic costs across the country. Businesses had to spend more money transporting raw materials and finished products. To maintain their profits, many businesses pass these additional costs on to consumers through higher prices. As a result, consumers paid more for goods and services, causing the Consumer Price Index or CPI to rise. This is an example of cost push inflation, where higher production and transportation costs lead to higher prices throughout the economy. In conclusion, inflation is the general increase in prices over time that reduces purchasing power. It can occur through demand pull inflation or cost push inflation. In March 2026, rising fuel prices increased transportation costs in Malaysia, which contributed to higher inflation by raising the prices of goods and services. So that's all from me. Let's move on to the next presenter.
My name is Zahra with ZULKIFLI and my student ID is SMC 25020128. So now I will be presenting my answer for question number 2, which focuses on government subsidies and how the Budi 95 programs helps to reduce the impact of inflation in Malaysia, especially when food prices are rising. Okay, so yes, for the first question, what is subsidy? So, according to the Intelligence Economics, Agrawal 2035, a subsidy is a form of financial or economic support given directly or indirectly to the producers of the product. Its primary purpose is to lower the overall cost of production, which naturally incentives business to increase the supply and production of that specific good or service while keeping customer prices affordable. In short, it is a financial aid by government to help people or businesses manage costs, lower the cost of living, and support the economy. Now for question B, one of important role of subsidy is maintaining purchasing power. In cases where fuel prices go up due to subsidy reforms, an increase in the cost of living automatically increase. This is because cash hands out will ensure that money goes to the pockets of lower and middle income consumers such as B40 and M40. So as a result, they will be capable of paying for their cost of living despite incurring extra expenses in terms of transportation of costs when obtaining food, electricity, and other necessities. Another role is preventing a cost push inflation. With the introduction of full subsidies or full rebates in specific strategical activities, low operational costs will be assured. Because of that, with a low cost of fuel incurred, it will mean that there won't be any price increases which will be charged to customer. Hence, no inflation will occur in the products available at supermarket. Relevant examples in each. So first is diesel assistant. So for this price controls and prevention of smuggling activities, we felt that it was necessary to have a Budi Madani financial assistant where eligible citizens could receive 200 ringgit every month, including to small farmers, so that there will not be an abrupt reduction in purchasing power of agricultural workers. Another example is the fleet car system under SKDS. So under SKDS program, trucks that are involved in logistics will still receive subsidies diesel using fleet car. This ensures that the logistic price involved in transporting goods from the ports to the cities will be regulated, hence regulating the price of food. Now, let's do a simple comparison between someone eligible for Budi Madani with someone that not eligible for Budi Madani. Okay, let's say that if I take 200 liters for a limit of liters per month, so for someone eligible for Budi Madani, 200 liters times 1 ringgit 99 cents equals to 398 ringgit per month. But for someone that not eligible for Budi Madani, 200 liters times 3 ringgit 72 cents equals to 744 ringgit per month. So the difference here is in about 346 ringgit per month. This shows that how subsidies can significantly reduce the financial burden, especially for lower income group.
I am the next presenter. My name is Maryam Maisarah binti RIZAN and my ID number is SMC 25020151. Today I will discuss about supply chain. First question, I will explain the definition of supply chain. Based on Oracle NetSuite in 2025, supply chain is a network of organizations, people, activities, information, and resources involved in producing and delivering a product or service from supplier to customer. A supply chain begins with suppliers, followed by manufacturers, distributors, retailers, and finally customers. An effective supply chain helps businesses reduce costs, improve efficiency, ensure product availability, and satisfy customer demand in a timely manner. Next question, I will discuss the impacts of rising fuel cost in Malaysian businesses. Based on several Malaysian articles from The Sun Malaysia, Bernama Malaysia SME, and Accounting.my, rising fuel prices without subsidies can significantly affect both the supply chain and businesses' cost, especially for infant businesses during inflations. The first impact is greater financial pressure on infant businesses. Infant businesses usually have limited capital and cash reserves compared to established firms. When fuel prices increases, transportation and operating costs can also increase. As a result, these businesses can find it harder to absorb higher expenses during inflation. According to The Sun Malaysia in 2026, many Malaysian SMEs were already struggling with higher operating expenses following diesel subsidy rationalization. Because of this situation, some infant businesses may increase selling prices, reduce business operations, experience cash flow problems, or face business failure. Second impact is supply chain disruptions and delays. Fuel is an important cost in transportation and logistic activities. When fuel prices rise, the cost of moving raw materials and finished products also increases. Based on Bernama in 2026, higher transportation costs have a negative impact on many production-related sectors and create ripple effects throughout the economy. To reduce cost, businesses may reduce delivery frequency. This can lead to slower inventory movement, longer lead times, and a higher risk of stock shortages. For infant businesses, unreliable supply can affect customer satisfaction and may cause customers to purchase from competitors instead. The third impact is reduced competitiveness for infant businesses. Established firms usually have stronger financial reserves, larger supplier networks, and greater bargaining power with suppliers. In contrast, infant businesses often have weaker negotiating power and face greater difficulty controlling costs during inflation. According to SME Association of Malaysia in 2026, diesel price hikes impacts the entire economy and not only for direct fuel users. As business costs continue to increase, infant businesses may struggle to compete on price. Customers may switch to larger competitors that are better able to maintain lower prices and stable product supply. Overall, rising fuel prices without subsidies increase transportation costs, disrupt supply chain activities, and raise business operating costs, and create a greater challenges for infant businesses during inflation. That's all from me. Now, on to the next presenter.
Assalamualaikum and hi. My name is Sharifah Elisya QISTINA binti Syed NIZAM. My ID number is SMC 25020288 and I am the last presenter. Now I will explain about the definitions of purchasing power and consumer price index, or also known as CPI. Purchasing power refers to the amount of goods and services that can be bought with a certain amount of money. For example, you have 100 ringgit and you can buy a full basket of groceries today. But next year, 100 ringgit can only buy few items because prices have increased. Therefore, purchasing power has decreased. Next is Consumer Price Index, or CPI. CPI measures the average changes in prices of goods or services that consumers normally buy, such as food, housing, transportation, and clothing. When CPI increases, it means the overall cost of living is increasing. CPI is also used to measure inflation. So the inflation rate can be calculated using this formula, which is currently CPI. You have to minus with previous year CPI, and the answer will divide it to previous year CPI and multiply to 100. For example, CPI in 2025 is 100 and CPI in 2026 is 115. So, by doing the formula given, the inflation rate will get 15%. This means the average price of goods and services increased by 15%. Next, what if fresh food prices did not decrease? According to the article, lower prices of seafood and meat help reduce inflation. If fresh food price hasn't decreased, Malaysia's inflation rate will be higher. This is because food is one of the main items included in CPI basket. When food price remain high, the overall cost of goods increases, causing inflation to rise. Current economic issues is the rising cost of food due to a price change distributions, climate changes, and higher production costs. For example, shortage of vegetables, rice, or poultry can cause food prices to increase. As food price rises, consumers need to spend more on daily necessities. So, because CPI will increase, right? Since food is an important component of CPI basket, higher food prices will increase the overall CPI. This indicates a higher cost of living and higher inflations. And purchasing power would decrease. When food prices increases but income remains the same, consumer can buy fewer goods and services. For example, 100 ringgit that previously bought grocery for 1 week may now only be enough for a few days. This shows that purchasing power has fallen. Finally, B40 household would be the most affected. This is because B40 household spends a large part of their income on food and basic necessities. If food price remain high, they need to spend more on groceries and have less money for savings, education, healthcare, and other needs. Example, a family earning 2,500 ringgit per month may need to spend an additional 100 to 200 on food each month. In conclusion, if fresh food prices had not decreased, Malaysia's inflation rate and CPI would be higher. Purchasing power would decrease because consumers could buy fewer goods with the same amount of money. The B40 group would be most affected because they spend most of their income on food and daily necessities. That's all from me. Thank you.